So I have a bowl of cereal, tea steeping in the other room, and I actually managed to have the mental health to take a shower this morning. So great. Um, let's continue where we left off.
So I'm going to go around and I'm going to add more and just repeat the same thing. Just do an extrusion on these little points there and just kind of drag it down. So let's do that. Because, yeah, I remember the first donut that I ever made. Oh, way back in the day, making the first donut. And I really I did one little dribble going down it. And then I always wanted to frame the camera so that it was looking at that because that was the most interesting part of the donut. And then I learned just exaggerate, just add little dribbles everywhere. That is a big part of being an artist is you look at reality and then you find the bits that are actually pleasing and then you exaggerate it. And that's what I'm doing. So, donuts typically don't have this many dribbles, but it's very pleasing. It just makes it look very like gooey and like, oh, there's so much icing. And you can see, by the way, I'm not doing the same shape also everywhere. So this is like a half one, right? And I'm kind of looking for like where I can add some different shapes. Why is that? There's a gap there. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I was recording for this tutorial and I recorded something and then I like reverted it. But I've now got a giant face here where there should be not a giant face there. So what do? You've accidentally got this thing. There is and this is you obviously don't have to do this because this is not your problem. But I'm just going to use the knife tool, which is a way to do an incision on a mesh and just add more geometry like freehand. So I've just fixed that little problem that I had there, but you hopefully should not have that problem. Yeah, I'm going to just pull this down. I'm going to turn on proportional editing. I'm going to add a little bit that's going down. And let's select these two, turn off proportional. Let's add another little bit that's going right here. Add a little bit of variance, and let's add another big one right here. Pull this one down.
What happened here? There be the problem there, Corporal. Okay. There we go. That's more like it. What? Hold Shift E Z. Tab Z. Solid. Cool. Wha- What text message did I get from my mom? Okay.
Down. But this is the fun part, you know? I mean, aside from the finicky, like going like sideways, looking at where it appears and then straightening it, but you get to kind of like shape things and just like with your eye, just play with it. It's actually one of the cool things of 3D. It's also why a lot of people get into 3D is they want to do art, but whenever they pick up a pencil, they just can't get the lines where they want it. And the great thing about 3D is that you've got points and you can move those points after the fact. You're not drawing freehand. So if you there's no case where you like screw up a line and you have to like rub it out and try again. Like you just grab a point and just kind of like move it around, like I'm doing right now. So that's one of the joys of 3D. I'm just trying to just doing filler talk if you can't tell. Just grab a few pieces, move them all down together. Why not? There we go. That's kind of interesting. I might add, I might just take this one at the bottom there off and I'll just maybe pull these out just so we've got more variance that goes all the way around it. But play with it as much as you want. You can pause this and, play with it. But I'm just trying to make it look generally appealing. Now, one way to improve this, you'll notice that the icing is separating from it, right? It's going up right there. And again, that's because of how subsurf modifiers work. There's a point here and there's a point here. So it has to make this really rounded shape. But real liquid, when it is in this state, when it's clinging to an object, this part here, as it hits it, that part will be like solid, right? And then the rest of it, like this part is round, but then this part is like hugging the actual surface. So thankfully, we can do that. There is a setting in the solidifier setting options, which I might have to move. There we go, so we can see it. Underneath edge data, there is an option here for a crease. Okay, so what a crease is doing, we didn't really talk about it with the mug, but it's essentially on an edge, it's creasing it and saying like, instead of like doing that huge rounded thing, just kind of tighten it on that edge. Very similar to adding the geometry like what we did on the mug, but this is a way to do it without adding extra geometry. It does kind of add a little bit of stretching, but it's not really that noticeable on something like this. But that is very, very nice, very solid. It's hugging it and it looks very pleasing. Excellent. Now we could as well. I didn't actually do this for my final one because I forgot. But I realized after I was like, oh yeah, I guess like the part that's on the inside of the donut. Yeah, I forgot to do that. But you can also like
Beat
do
you
the
to it.
exact same thing, just playing with it. If you find like it's kind of hard to like look at it inside the donut, if you just select the middle row, so if you just hold down Alt and then select on that middle row, you can use the same focus button, so numpad period, or tilde and then view, and then that will just lock it on to those selected vertices. So that focus key that I mentioned, it works on in edit mode as well, which is good. So yeah, I could just pull these down like this and just, the camera's not really going to notice it. You just want to make sure that it's, not perfectly straight like mine was in the final render. It doesn't really, like, who's going to notice, who's going to tell, really? Um, Annoying people are going to point it out. The inside part's too straight. All right. So that's pretty good. Actually, something I might do, because I noticed, like, looking from the top, because this is where the camera is going to be, like, we're not really able to see much donut. Like, the icing is a little bit too far down. So I'm just going to grab some of these points here using proportional editing. I'm just going to pull them up to just expose a little bit more of the underlying donut, which is definitely going to make the donut look a little bit more handmade, you know, because, like, obviously probably a professional donut from Krispy Kreme or something doesn't have this much variance in it, but it's okay. It does kind of help it give it a realistic kind of look. Now, there's one thing that would really improve the look of this icing, and that is thickness variation. Because if you go around it, you'll see that the exact, the distance from here to here is the exact same thing as, like, what it would be over here to here. And that's just not the case. We've got, like, icing that is dribbling down. These little droplets are kind of like breaking away. And what happens when those droplets break and then they kind of stop? They build up, right? So we should actually see these kind of like swell a little bit. They should be a little bit rounder at the heads of each of these points. Also, along the edges here, every little edge here should be a little bit more inflated than the rest of it. And although that sounds like nothing, when you do it, when you actually add this little detail, it really does improve the realism. So we can't do that because all we've got is these little points here, okay? So just like what we did with the mug, there comes a time where you need to break the non-destructive workflow and apply your modifiers. So this shrink wrap here, by the way, when you apply something, you have to apply it in like top to bottom. So even really, although we only want to apply the solidify, that's the main one we want to do. We have to first of all apply the shrink wrap because that's the one that is first, and that's the one, like, if we applied this one first, we would lose the shrink wrap would have to go after, and it would just, it would screw it up. So we have to apply the shrink wrap first. So go here and click apply. Okay. Now in edit mode, you can see we've still got those single points, but they're now snapped.
I'm in edit mode.
Right? But it means we know.
Hold up. I'm in edit mode. Tab out of edit mode. Apply. Okay.
No longer have that automatic snapping. So if I was to pull these out, you can see they're now separated from the mesh. So just keep that in mind. We still can't edit the mesh there because we haven't applied the solidify. So I'm going to apply the solidify now. And now we've got these points here. Okay.
Now I got to apply a solidifier. Okay, cool. That's actually really cool.
So now if I wanted to, with just these points, I could pull some of these points out, turning off proportional editing, and I could just pull them out a little bit. And that's better, but we don't have enough detail here. We need more geometry to play with in order to add this extra detail. So we need to apply our subsurf modifier. So I'm going to, on here, I'm going to hit apply. And actually there's a hotkey if you don't want to have to go to the drop down.
Tab C
Control A will apply the selected modifier. And now in edit mode, look at this. Now we've got all this extra geometry to play with. So
okay. Control A. Oh, wait, no. That highlighted the video. Show less. In here. Control A. No. Okay. Now I got all the geometry.
Now if I wanted to, I could turn on proportional editing. I could select one point. I could try and get a kind of a shape like this. That would be probably the best way to do it if I was restricted to edit mode. And that'll get me some of the way there. I could, pull individual points out. I could try and do that. But you can see it's very finicky. And it's not the tool to use. Because like I said, there are tools for everything in 3D to try to help you to to do things better. So go to the top of your screen. We're currently in layout. That's all we've done so far. We're going to swap to sculpting. All right. Now, when you swap to a new one of these views here, it's assuming the default view of Blender, which is like when everything was like 10 meters long or whatever. So our donut is tiny. So we have to focus on the selected object. So I'm just going to hit numpad period. That hasn't worked. Okay, don't worry about that. All right. So instead of in sculpt mode, change to object mode. Then hit numpad period or view selected. And then now jump back to sculpt mode. And now we're back to it. For some reason, I thought focus worked in sculpt mode. Yeah. All right. Sometimes you just teach something and then you go, oh, that never worked. What was I talking about? Anyway. Okay, in sculpt mode now, and make sure you're looking at the correct one, okay? Not the donut, but the icon.
I had to confirm a appointment. Okay. I'm actually going to take my bowl of cereal and grab my tea. Back to it.
Icing itself. If I was to now draw over this, you can see we're drawing into the mesh of the icing. Isn't that cool? All right. So what I want to do is I want to change my brush and I want to find the one brush which is really going to help us here. And it is this one, the inflate deflate brush. Now, your brush size here can be controlled by the size at the top, or there is a hotkey, F. And when you hit F, you just choose with your mouse like how big the size needs to be. Okay, so I can pull out. And then now, if I just draw over that little globule there, the end piece, it just adds a little bit of inflation. And so I'm just pulling it around just slightly. I don't want to go too far, but just adding these little inflated points will really help this to look realistic. The other thing is you can actually shape some of the mesh as well. So there's another brush that I use all the time, which is the grab brush. You just essentially just pull mesh like that. So that's another easy way to just kind of move pieces around like so. You can just shape things like this, add a little bit of extra detail if you want. Yep. And all is well. So you can see I'm doing a little bit on the edge here again because all the edges there should have a little bit of buildup of the fluid because that's where gravity kind of makes it stall and like stop because it just kind of like runs out of like the tension will be more than the gravity that's pulling it down. You get the idea. Anyways, play with that as much as you like. But of course, we have some homework to finish off this video. So what I want you to make is this hidden object, which is a plate for your donut. So have a look at the shape here that I've got and have a think about how you would go about creating this and try to do it yourself. Just give it a stab. Even if you don't feel confident, you don't feel like you could achieve it, just give it a go. There's a hint. We've got some modifiers on the right here, and I will also show you what the wireframe looks like because that will probably help some people out as well. Okay, so that's a pretty big hint. But yeah, give it a go. Without any instruction from me, have a stab at that. In the next part, I'll very quickly show you how to create this. If you get completely lost, you can join me in that part, but please have a go at trying to do it yourself. Anyway, go ahead, join me in the next part after you have tried to create this by yourself.
Okay. So I'll need to make a second plate. Wonderful. Wonderful. I've made a plate before. That actually looks really nice. Now I gotta make another plate. Shift A, mesh, cylinder, vertices, 16, radius, tab. Size. Size. Tab edit mode. 3 for face select. Select the top face. X, delete faces. Select edge with number 2. Select with that. Size. That's incorrect. I need to disable proportional editing, then press S. Okay, there we go. There we go. E S. Like that. Then E C. Like that. Add modifier. Generate. Solidify. Add modifier. Generate subdivision surface. Increase it to 2. G C. Make that more concave like that. G C. Uh, loop cut hotkey. Uh, Blender. Hotkey. Loop cut. Loop cut. Control R. Control R. Right there. Solidify. Make it even thicker. About this rim. G C. Raise the rim a bit. How does it How does it look in the video?
We lost. Quickly show you how to create this. If you get completely lost, you can join me in that part. But please have a go at trying to do it yourself. Anyway, go ahead, join me in the next part.
G, C. Make that even deeper. Wireframe. G, C. Lower that. Tab C, solid. Wireframe. Tab C, wireframe. Tab. I don't know. Simple. C, solid. Tab. Control R. Like that. G, C. Raise that up. Scale smaller. Okay. That's that's pretty darn close. Actually, maybe make it a little bit thinner. 0.04. 0.03. That looks pretty darn good to me.
After you have tried to create this by yourself. Welcome back. How did you go making your plate? Hope you all attempted it. If you didn't or you got stuck, don't worry because I'm going to show you how to make it right now. So if you had no problems with it, you might want to skip forward. This might be a little boring, but otherwise I'm going to show everyone how
Okay.
I would go.
Okay, I'll skip forward. I'll skip forward. Damn. Didn't realize I was getting good already. Hey, he started with a circle. I started with cutting up a cylinder. Yo! What's up? How's it going, me believe? It's you. I forgot which community we met in. Is it the Oh, never mind. Hello, sibling. At work for real, for real. Well, that's great. That's great. I successfully made a plate, a donut, and a cup in the 2 hours yesterday and the what looks like 35, 40 minutes today. So that's good. I took a shower this morning. That's a big step. What's the next part?
Type of face underneath fill. So there's two options. Either of them will do. Ngon is just one single face shared amongst the 32, or the triangle fan will mean there's one point in the middle. You can actually see it in this mode. One point in the middle, and then it just creates triangles to that point. I'm going to go with Ngon because, it's never failed me for this option, so I'll just use that. Okay. Now we need to add more geometry to this because we need to create some sort of a lip for.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, he was right. This section was going to be boring, and I already know how to make a plate. I have already made 2 plates.
Where do you want to? Before we start, we need, and then I can reselect that line by holding down Alt and then left clicking on it.
He he made a cylinder only to have to cut a cylinder instead of just making a cylinder and just removing one of the faces to the cylinder. That just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
And now, if I want to create another lip, which is not just straight up, but
okay, let's skip through a little bit. Skip through a little bit.
So pull. Jagged favorite. It's just. I'm gonna just select this, and I'm just gonna.
Okay.
exact circumstance where you know exactly what you're going to do, and then at the end of it, like, you know the order in which to do things. Sometimes you're working with a client and they've got an idea for something, and then far later on they're like, you know what, let's change the proportions of the car or whatever it is, and you have to be able to like fix it without you
Wait, hold up. I think I skipped too far.
hard to a sharper edge on it. We would model from reference, but I actually had a photo scan plate from Polygon, which we'll get to later. But yeah, this is just modeling from that reference that I already had, but this is the design of it. So there you go. Great. Now let's bring back our donut and our icing. Now, I saw a comment on the last video that said, you didn't make the donut lumpy like last time. It's so over. Why? Oh, ye have little faith. You think I would forget something like that? Maybe I did forget. But I'm actually glad I did, because this is a great opportunity to talk about a new tool. So for those that haven't watched a previous version, before we did the icing, we made the donut lumpy, which I did by going into edit mode, and then I just selected vertices using proportional editing and pulled it out, right? And just kind of like, maybe I shrink some parts in, this kind of thing. And the reason this is important is that this adds natural variation, because you could have scientists working for
So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make this the plate, which I need to rename from cylinder to plate. I'm gonna make the plate disappear. I'm gonna make the saucer go not. I'll make the mug disappear. I'll make the icing disappear since I'm done with the icing now. Okay.
a lab, and they would never be able to create a donut as perfectly mathematically accurate as our 3D software has done. This is too perfect. There is natural variation, and we need to see that for the eye to go,
Press
this is,
period.
Something realistic, right? And it's hard to do this kind of thing after you've already added the icing, because you can see it just has no bearing on the icing over the top, right? So some things in 3D are easier to do earlier than they are to do later. And this is something you just learn as you do 3D. Like, you'll do so many projects where you just like, you get to the end and you go like, oh man, why didn't I do that before I did this? Now this is like, I've like 3x'd the amount of work, and you just learn these things over time. However, there are certain tools.
I don't believe that I agree with the court's contention that I am in fact goated. I do not believe I am goated at all.
And there is one I'm going to introduce you to in a second that enable you to make these sort of changes after. By the way, there is a way, like, you can select both objects like this, which that is something that you can do in Blender now. You didn't used to always be able to, but you can now edit both objects together. So I could do this. It does have like a clipping issue when you try to do like shrink fatten, but you can get some like natural lumpy variations going this way. And you can do that. That's actually fine. But I do want to introduce you to a new tool that is in 5.0. And it is, if you select both of your icing and your donut together, then you hit Shift A, and then you go lattice. There's a new option for lattice deform selected. We always had lattice, but it was very finicky to set up. But now you've got lattice deform selected, and that adds this, what looks like a
Hold on, I got distracted. What? Well, thank you, sibling. Thank you. So he did a ton of yapping, and then I got
Element view.
distracted.
That is something that you can do in Blender. Now, you didn't used to always be able to, but you can now edit both objects together. So I could do this. It does have like a clipping issue when you try to do like shrink fatten, but you can get some like natural lumpy variations going this way. And you
I
can do
love you
that.
too.
That's actually fine. But I do want to introduce you to a new tool that is in 5.0. And it is, if you select both of your icing and your donut together, then you hit Shift A and then you go lattice. There is a new option for lattice deform selected. We always had.
Okay, so I do need the icing.
Power off.
I need the icing and the donut. I need to select both. And then I need to Shift A, lattice deform selected. Is that right?
It was very finicky to set up, but now you've got lattice deform selected, and that adds this, what looks like a cube, like a bounding box over your object. But it's not actually going to appear in your render. All it is a deformation guide. So if you just select these points, you can see we are twisting the donut. But importantly, the actual donut is underneath. Like, this is a modifier, right? So we're not actually changing the mesh at all. It's just doing this after the fact. And then if I just deleted my lattice, like it's gone. It's back to where it was. So this is a non-destructive workflow. These little points here, they enable me to, at any point in the future, change and deform a mesh, which is actually really useful. And it's because you're not often in the exact circumstance where you know exactly what you're going to do, and then at the end of it, like, you know the order in which to do things. Sometimes you're working with a client and they've got an idea for something, and then far later on they're like, you know what, let's change the proportions of the car or whatever it is, and you have to be able to like fix it without redoing all your mesh. So that's what
Wonderful.
a lattice can do. Now it comes by default with just this low res cube over it, but if down here you click this little data property, for the lattice.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean data property? Oh, okay. Okay. So I can increase I can increase the segments. Okay. Okay. That's something. Okay, so if I press O, that would be proportional editing. I can select G, increase the size of the tool a little bit, and then I just oh wow, okay. So I can do that, do that. Do a little bit of that. Are you looking to go into more 3D animation, or this just for fun? I am trying to learn Blender as a whole, like the whole like program, because you can do a lot of things in Blender. You can do 2D animation, you can do 3D animation, you can do video editing, it's a toolbox with a lot of tools in it. And I just want to learn as much that's inside of it as possible. because there is so much that you can do with it. And hopefully I'll make videos and post them onto YouTube that aren't shit. Because I will admit that I don't know anything. Oh, that point went a little bit too high. No, Z. There we go. Whoever does uh know anything, uh, I don't know. I think Bill Nye knows a couple things, but he also had times in which he was also not knowing things. So, not really. Knowing everything, I feel like would make somebody insane. Anybody who says that they know everything uh, is trying to sell you something or trying to start a cult. That's my opinion. Okay, I think that's enough deformation right now.
Increase this, I can add in some more resolution here. And importantly, I want to add one in the middle here. Because the first thing you notice when you look at reference of donuts is that besides the lumpy shape, the bit around the middle of the donut is often whiter and it's not as puffy. And when you look at how donuts are cooked, it's actually easy to see why. It's half submerged in the oil, and then it is flipped over onto the other side, and then the other side cooks. So it cooks one side and then it cooks the other. And the bits, near the surface of the oil, that's the oil is less hot, right? Because it's near the surface, so it's escaping. So that oil is less hot. The oil that's underneath it is much hotter, and then it flips it over. And so, again, you always have this bit around the middle that just isn't quite cooked as well as the other stuff. So it ends up being a little bit lighter. It's also less puffy. So no donut actually comes out at that perfectly round shape. It's usually always kind of almost concave actually around the middle. So with this, I can select all of these points here like so. I have to
Hold
shift
on.
select them. I can't do the
I think I can do this better than his video. Hold on. If I oh wait, I can't select like that. That's stupid. I gotta select all of the vertices individually. This feels gross doing it this way. I wish I could have like loop select. But no, this way. Okay. Wonderful.
clicking around it
Wonderful.
because it's not technically a mesh. And then I can just scale it in. Like turn off proportional editing if you've got it on, and then just shrink it in like that. And that by itself will add just a little bit of realism to this, because that is a detail that your eye won't notice. Everyone thinks donuts are just, they're perfectly round, but they're actually not, right? They've always got this like concave kind of shape around it. So that will add some realism. But then I can add in some little areas here where one part it got a little bit more puffy on that side, so that part's a little bit raised up. And obviously this isn't as detailed as if you had, if you were manipulating the torus underneath, right? I can't do like, small details. I can't, sculpt in an area or do some crazy changes, but it's enough in a pinch to do something like this. I'm just going to hide my plate. Which, by the way, you can do it by hitting the eyedropper, which is what I've been doing up there. Sorry, not the eyedropper, the eye icon. You can also do it by hitting H. So you select an object in the viewport, you hit H, and then you hit Alt H to bring it back. So H or Alt H is a good hotkey to remember. And then here, so at the bottom here,
H.
because yeah, the same thing will happen at the bottom. There'll be parts where
Alt
like the
H.
donut looks a little bit like
Alt
raised
H.
on the plate a little bit, like this, just around the middle here, like that. There you go, something like that. But this is just a small amount of
Alt
definition,
H brings
right?
everything that's hidden
unnecessary.
back, not just the thing that you have selected. Why does it do that? Why can't it just bring back the thing that was hidden, that is selected? Why does it have to bring everything back? I'm being needlessly pedantic.
But it does help. It really does help things to feel more realistic when you go to the trouble of doing some of this. And it's super, super important. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut. And I can also say apply there. And now I can just delete this lattice. And now it's like I modeled that, right?
Okay. So I select the icing. Wait, hold on.
And now I can just delete this lattice, and now like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut, and I can also say apply there. And now I can just delete this lattice and selecting the donut, and I can over it forever. So now apply, um, and it's super important. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut, and I can also say apply there. And now I can just delete this lattice, and now it's like
Hold up. Hold up. I'm gonna have to rewind him more.
over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to it might seem unnecessary, but it does help. It really does help things to feel more realistic when you go to the trouble of doing some of this. And it's super important. But we can also now apply it. Once I know that I like everything, I don't want to have this like lattice sitting over it forever. So I can just apply that by going to apply and then selecting the donut, and I can also say apply there.
I'm in edit mode. So now I'm in object mode. Lattice. Apply. Modifiers disabled, skipping apply. Lattice. Okay. Lattice. Apply. Donut. Lattice. Apply. Okay.
And now I can just delete this lattice.
So now I can delete the lattice. And the mesh is modified. Wonderful. G R X. Okay. G R Y. G R. Okay. G C. Okay. Okay, so now the donut looks like it's flat on the plate. Beautiful.
And now it's like I modeled that, right? All those shapes are now like baked into it. And it looks good. As I said before, if you did want to do any more detail, you could, shift, select multiple objects, go into edit mode, and then using proportional editing, you could also do some like more targeted tweaks. If you really wanted to, manipulate the donut, you could do that. So there are things that you can do. It does make a difference. It is important. But it is also optional. But it's an excuse to kind of introduce you to some more tools and things in Blender. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't do it at the start, because we can introduce you to that kind of thing. So, all right, we got a lumpy looking donut. Good for us. Now is the exciting bit. We can talk about rendering. Oh, making this actually look good, because this is gray. This is boring. This is called the 3D viewport view. Okay. The reason this looks boring and flat is that this is cheaper for your computer to actually process just the shapes in like a gray. There's no shadows, there's no lighting, there's no surface interaction or anything like that. This is fast for your computer to see. To create that pretty image that looks realistic with light calculations and everything, that is called a render. And you can do a render by either hitting F12 on your keyboard, or by going to render and then saying render image. And now that has taken a snapshot. The problem is it looks like not the view that we were looking at. So we're looking at this view. Why did we get a view up here? The reason is that Blender will always take the render from the camera view. So remember that thing that's like way out in the middle of nowhere we haven't touched? It's taking the view from that camera. And you can look through the camera by hitting the camera view icon over there. So now that I'm here in this view, how do we move it in close? How do we get it close to our thing? So there's a number of like traditional ways to bring a camera into like in Blender. I'll actually show you the way I first learned to do this, because it's actually just like natural to me. But then I'll show you the method that actually most people prefer. So you can just, with the camera selected, you can hit G. You can move things around like that. If you want to bring it in, like just zoom to the like straightforward, if you hit G and then middle mouse button, that will like kind of, what's it called, dolly in and out, which can be very useful. And then if I want to like tilt it, I can like just hit rotate like that, or I can rotate along the Z axis, right? Because I know how to like turn the camera. So that was how I learned to use the camera, and how a lot of people still like to do it. But a lot of new people prefer this, because now in 5.0, it's actually just a button right here. If you click this button, now I can use the same controls that I used before to move the camera. Because if you don't have that checked, the moment you just like hit your middle mouse to like orbit somewhere else, it leaves the camera behind, okay? But when you're looking through the camera and you have this checked, now when I orbit around and I zoom and I do all the same control as before,
Okay.
shift middle mouse, I can position the camera exactly where I want it, get it right there, without having to worry. You just have to remember, don't then immediately orbit like you're going to go do something, because the camera is still locked to your view. So you have to make sure you uncheck it when you're done, and then the camera is locked to that position there. And by the way, this is like a small thing, but
Beautiful.
when you're working with like small objects, you often have to like change, because Blender is like designed for like environment, like big types of scenes. This camera is just too big. So if you go to the camera settings, click the camera thing, then go to viewport display. I just changed the display of this. This has no bearing on the actual like final render. This is just how it displays in your viewport, so that it's not so gigantic it's taking over everything. All right. The other way you can
Okay. Camera. Viewport display. Wonderful. So there's the camera.
Can quickly look through the camera is numpad 0. So numpad 0 will take you in and out. All right, but now that I'm there, I can hit F12 and look at that. That is a different look. It's still gray because the default materials are gray.
Hold on. Where's the light? GC. GX. GY. Oh. Okay.
Gray, but you can see there is shadow there.
Render image. Uh-oh. Something bad happened? Oh, okay. Not gonna lie, that looks pretty bright. That's not quite the image that I was hoping for. Do I have to shade smooth everything? Shade smooth everything and then make the light further away. Render. Oh, hold on. Output. Image PNG. Blender image. Accept. Accept. Documents. No. Okay, that is actually my alarm to let me know that I need to get ready to go to work. Um, Pictures. New folder. Blender image. Select. Accept. Render image. Okay. There's that image. So shade smooth and having the light source much further away actually make things look a little bit better. Well, freaking, I'll, I'll do this again. Uh, Tomorrow's my day off, but I also have to like do groceries and shit. It's I'll be sure to take a shower before going to bed instead of this morning so I have more time. Oh, wait, no, I also have that appointment with a thing to get drug uh mental brain thing. Uh yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that I have a corporeal form that I need to maintain and uh, conduct maintenance upon. It's. But at least I have done an hour more of learning Blender. I'll only get better from here. Maybe I'll do a couple more hours. Yeah, how dare I be responsible? How unlike me to be responsible. Anyway, I'll I'll see what I can do tomorrow after I've done all of the stuff that I need to do for that day. Uh, but anyway, cheers. Who am I? A human, I think. I believe I'm a human. Well, I bleed like one. I sound like one. Okay. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.